For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. Proudly South African CEO Leslie Sidibe joins me in studio to discuss the revival of the Proudly South African campaign. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. Proudly South African has been around for a number of years, and there seems to be an effort to revive it again. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Proudly South African was formed in 2001 following the 1998 Presidential Job Summit under the leadership of former President Nelson Mandela. And at the time, the thrust of the discussion was around the need to rally the people of South Africa. So essentially the campaign was based on three key pillars. One is national pride, secondly is patriotism, and thirdly is the buy local campaign. And the importance of the buy local campaign is that it helps to stimulate job creation in an economy. Over the last couple of years, unfortunately, the campaign has gone through a lull. I think it had lost the momentum, and the view of the board and indeed government was that there's a need to revive the campaign, strengthen the governance structures within the campaign, and ensure that it becomes an optimal agent to advocate on issues of the national buy local campaign.
Now, if you are able to fulfill your mandate, what impact could it have on job creation?
Massive. You know, the buy local campaign is actually an internationally tried and tested method, because what it does is, and you would, in view of what happened with the global economic meltdown, I know we often talk about it as an economic meltdown, but it was really a meltdown in many aspects of governance across businesses and across government and in many societies. But the real impact was in the economy. Now, the main challenge that a lot of businesses across the world faced was that in an environment where there is an economic meltdown, orders are cancelled, and therefore it becomes very important for you to rely on your own people to buy your product. So, for instance, if somebody is in the, whether it's import or export business, and suddenly you are faced with financial pressures and you are not able to import or to export, what do? You know, people generally would cancel an order if it's an overseas order, and that's what happened to a number of businesses across the world, and it therefore became necessary for most economies. In fact, those economies that did very well, that survived the economic meltdown, such as China, they relied very heavily on their own people. And we believe very strongly that, for instance, in South Africa, we were quite fortunate that in 2010 we hosted the 2010 FIFA World Cup, and prior to that we had the infrastructure rollout, whether it's the stadiums, the road infrastructure, the transport, the airports, and that brought in a lot of, it stimulated the economy, and it cushioned us against the global crisis that faced most economies. And so the buy local campaign, in our view, is, I mean, our campaign was based on the Australian model, and in fact even in America, certain states in the US do have the buy local campaign. The main advantages of the buy local campaign is that it keeps money in the country, and it circulates in the economy, and what it therefore means is that there is no migration of capital. And most importantly, if I'm an investor in an economy and I believe that my people are going to support me, it gives me more impetus it encourages me to invest more and more in the economy. As you know, one of the biggest sectors of the economy that were hit the most is manufacturing. In fact, globally, the manufacturing trend is that we are actually in the phase of deindustrialization. And it is quite important that we work with our partners. In fact, last year, we entered into a cooperation agreement with the manufacturing circle, and part of that agreement was that we would talk to government on issues, for example, such as the influx of illegal products that are flooded into our market, the issues of under-invoicing, the issues around the competitiveness of our currency. We need to stabilize our economy and have the right economic outlook, and because you see, one of the challenges that South African products will always find even in their own country is that some of these products that enter our market, they're heavily subsidized from the country of origin. And therefore there is something that we as South Africans, working with the South African government, we need to do, and we are engaging with ITEC, for example, to deal with issues of illegal dumping, so that our products do not, at the end of the day, end up competing unfairly with cheaper, inferior products that come from countries that have absolutely no respect for human rights and the rights of workers. And so we are saying holistically that the question of buy local is one that stimulates the economy, money stays in the country, and it helps to create jobs. The more people go out and buy local products, the more local manufacturers, the more local investors, local entrepreneurs are encouraged to invest more and more, and that the bigger the business grows, the greater the capacity for you to be able to employ more people.
Now, speaking of government, Proudly South African's revival coincides with government's recently unveiled Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, as well as the Local Procurement Accord. Do you think this adds impetus to Proudly South African, and what role can it play?
No, absolutely. In fact, if there's anything that Proudly South African needed the most, it is actually this instrument, because for a very long time, Proudly South African never had was never backed up by legislation. So on the 8th of June in 2011, the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, promulgated this regulation. In October, 31st of October last year, government, business, organized labor, and community partners entered into this local procurement accord. And the thrust of the accord is really to say, we need to support localized procurement, and the parties have set themselves a target of 75%. What is of key interest for us as Proudly South African is that we are supposed to do two things. One is to, in terms of the accord, we are required to provide a national database of suppliers in the country, and that's something that we are working on. And so what we will be doing in the coming weeks and months is to run a national campaign, which is the second issue. We need to run a national campaign to educate people about the importance of buying locally. And so this is the one instrument, the Preferential Procurement Regulation is one instrument that in our view will really give more meaning and relevance to and support to the buy local campaign, because before we had this piece of legislation, it was really more based around sentiment. And now here you have government, and we do know that government spends a lot of money, billions and billions of rands, and it's not just government. When you look at Section 2, which is the application provision in the regulation, it talks to it does not only apply to national government and the departments in the national government. It applies to provinces. It also applies to municipalities, and most importantly, state-owned enterprises. So the likes of Eskom, your likes of Transnet, the SABC, and many other state-owned enterprises, that in their procurement decisions, there should be a natural bias and a preference for products that are made in South Africa.
And that makes perfect sense.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that it will really help the people of South Africa to stimulate jobs, because you see, it doesn't really help our economy, and this is no form of economic xenophobia, but it doesn't really help our economy that products are just products that are made from outside South Africa. They flood our own economy, and at the end of the day, we are not able to sustain our own living. Massive job losses, and we saw it in the textile industry. A lot of the factories closed down, a lot of people lost their jobs, and so it is quite important that not only, and in fact this is something that we are in discussion with the Minister of Mineral Resources, and as you know, the Minister last year spoke about the need to introduce beneficiation programs, that South Africa, we just export our natural resources, whether it's manganese, iron ore, gold, diamonds, and yet we do not have the domestic capacity to be able to transform those mineral resources into something that people will walk into the shops and buy, either in the form of a jewelry or whatever. And so it's, for us, it's quite encouraging. We are very grateful to government for taking this. I think it's long overdue, and I think that you see the fact that we now have government in our corner, we have government supporting us, really adds a great impetus to the work of the campaign. And so you're going to see a different Proudly South African going forward.
Now, there seems to be a perception that Proudly South African membership has waned over the last few years. What do you think the benefits are of being recommitted to that, either by an organization or individual people?
Well, I spoke about the issue of legislation. One of the biggest challenges that we faced was this question of the value proposition. A lot of the people ask, what is the benefit of me being part of Proudly South African? Well, there you have it. We now have the local procurement accord where business, government, organized labor, and the community partners. This is quite important because what it effectively says is that gone are the days when even the unions themselves, when they go on a march or protest activity against unemployment, they are wearing T-shirts that were made in China. Gone are the days when you have government officials, when they exchange gifts with the Chinese counterparts. Instead of giving them products from South Africa, they give them products that come from China. And so our responsibility as Proudly SA is to rally the people of South Africa, especially the suppliers, to say, come on board. Come on board, because one of the things that we are busy with, South African Bureau of Standards, is the question of the local, the product of origin. Because there needs to be a mark that people will say, government departments will know that if this product has this mark, then it means that it qualifies and we can purchase from this supplier. Now, in terms of the membership for Proudly South African, we focus on 4 key criteria. One is we say we place an emphasis on local content of over 50%. And in the case of imported products, we are saying that there needs to be a substantial transformation of that product, and so that we don't just end up being a nation where you order suits from Turkey, they go into a warehouse and then onto the streets. Something needs, you need to give it character. That cloth that you import, you need to give it character. So that's the first criteria. The second one is quality. Our people need to be innovative. Our people need to be creative. We are not going to say support South African products simply because it was made in South Africa. If you make a glass, that glass, when you put on the table and you pour water into it, should not disintegrate. So quality becomes very important. Thirdly is the question of the environmental awareness. The environment is a big thing, and South Africa just recently hosted the COP17. We take the issues of the environment very seriously. Number 4, which is very key, is the question of the adherence to fair labor practices. We and our compliance team continues to monitor. We are not embarrassed to say we do not have a problem losing a member who does not adhere to a fair labor practice. So there are a number of reasons why we lost members over the years. Part of it has to do with the global economic meltdown. People cut down subscription. But fundamentally, it was the question of the value proposition, and something that we are working very hard on. And we are saying that when you see a product that has a logo, the Proudly South African logo, you know that it stands behind 4 key criteria, and 3 key pillars, which is national pride, patriotism, and the buy local campaign. And so going forward, we are going to work very hard with other agencies within government, such as the South African Bureau of Standards, to make sure, I mean, the South African Bureau of Standards is more on the technical side. They will focus on, is this product fit for use? And so that mark would become very, very key in identifying the products as being from South Africa. And so one of the things that, some of the other things that we intend to do as Proudly South Africa is to focus on research. We need to understand our economy, understand why people buy cheap products. My own view is that people buy cheap product because it's price driven, it's desperate purchases. But I think if we educate our people and sensitize them of the importance that if you buy a product that comes from South Africa, you are actually giving another South African an opportunity to have a job. So we're going to build our research capacity, we're going to do market research, we're going to focus on consumer education, we're going to focus on a partnership for purposes of job creation. You know that the question of job creation is one of the key priorities within government, and that is our mandate as Proudly South African, to rally the people of South Africa, that it is through one of the ways that we can create jobs in our country is if we buy products that are made in our own country, so that there is more and more investment. And we are also saying to the international community, because we don't want to come across as economic xenophobists, we are saying invest in our country, set up factories and businesses in South Africa and operate from our country. And you will become Proudly South African, because then you are contributing directly to the GDP of this country, and by definition to the economic wealth and prosperity and growth of our country. And I think that if we live in a society where we deal with issues such as poverty, we will address a lot of social ills.
Well, thank you very much for your input, and I wish you all the best for the campaign.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
That was Proudly South African CEO Leslie Sidibe. Thank you for watching.